Hello, BookTube. Well, wow, so much has happened since the last video aired. Last Saturday, I joined fellow booktuber Gareth from Books, Songs and Other Magic, and also Shawn from Shawn D. Standfast. And we went to help Shawn pack up his book collection so that he can put those boxes into storage in preparation for moving home. Shawn gave us both a video shout out on the Saturday night, and I don't know exactly how that affected Gareth's numbers. I know he had an increase in subscribers, but had a big impact on my channel. I mean, I went from, I think it was 36 subscribers to I think I'm at 63 now. It's just, funny to go to bed with the lower number and wake up with the higher one. So before we get started, anyway, I want to say a big welcome and thank you to all those people who are here that are new. You're obviously very loyal to Shawn. And now the onus is on me to give you the material that would do credit to his recommendation. Here we go. The book we're going to look at today is The Courtier and the Queen, Sir Christopher Hatton and Elizabeth I, written by Malcolm Deacon, published in 2008 by Park Lane Publishing. Now, for my new subscribers, I do a series of set questions for my book reviews. So I'll number them so that you can see what order we're going in. You'll get used to it after a while, and you'll know when we've transitioned to a new question. But question one is always, could I summarize this book? This is a well-researched biography by a devoted amateur historian. It's the life story of a courtier of Elizabeth I who hasn't gained much attention, I've got to be honest, from professional historians. Why? No idea. My impression as I was reading Deacon's biography was that Sir Christopher Hatton acted as the Queen's, almost her executive assistant. He was her spokesperson in Parliament, and it was common knowledge among those who needed any royal favour that it was Hatton they needed to contact and Hatton that they needed to persuade. This is a book you need to own, I think, if you're a Tudor enthusiast, because Malcolm Deacon lived very close to the Northamptonshire Records Office, which was where Hatton was based in Northamptonshire. That's where Holdenby House and Kirby Hall, his two residences, were. But he also would have been only an hour away from London by train. So looking up records in London would not have been a problem. He had access to a lot of primary sources, and this book is crammed with really good detail. Okay, so question two is, what is known about the author? Well, everything I know about Malcolm Deacon, I picked up from the Milton Malsor Historical Society website. Milton Malsor, by the way, it is where Malcolm Deacon lived. It's a village just to the southwest of Northampton. And you'll remember I said earlier that Sir Christopher Hatton represented the county of Northamptonshire as a member of Parliament, and his most famous residence, Holdenby House, is just a short drive from Milton Malsor. So you can see how Malcolm Deacon had this, he was perfectly situated to research this man's life. Deacon himself, he began his career in teaching. He became a primary school head teacher, but at some point he decided he needed to change direction and became an ordained minister in the United Reformed Church. He served a congregation at Castle Hill Church in Northampton. He also wrote a history of that church. He served as chairman of the Milton Malsor Historical Society from 2004. He wrote a number of books about noteworthy county residents, and he also earned a reputation as a public speaker. He was often invited to give talks to other local historical societies, let me get that right, universities, women's institutes. Sadly, Malcolm died during the COVID-19 lockdown, and it must have been very hard on those close to him because only a small number of people were able to attend his funeral. I'm going to leave links in the description box so that you can visit the Milton Malsor Historical Society, and also some links to some of Malcolm Deacon's other published works. I noticed one of them seems to be an autobiography, so that could be quite interesting if you want to know more about him. Okay, so question three, we always ask, how is the book structured? Deacon doesn't really go, yes, he does move in chronological order, but what he's more interested in his chapters of the book is focusing on an event or a period, and then he fleshes out that event using quotations direct from his primary sources, and then filling in some cultural details from his other research. So, for example, on pages 18 and 19 of the book, you get quite a bit of detail about how a jousting tournament was held, and that, of course, was the inspiration for this photograph, which is a mock jousting tournament at Holdenby House. So there you go. You get a view of Sir Christopher Hatton's residence. This book is 256 pages long. Only 199 of those are text. There is a lot of resource in the back of this book. Let me just quickly read you a list of what you get. You will get a map of the county of Northamptonshire showing the locations of all the great houses. You will get a chronology of Hatton's life. You'll get a record of all his voting for all the sessions of Parliament at which he sat. You'll get excerpts from a schedule of his costs when he was refurbishing Ely House in Holborn, which was just one of his residences, because the next thing you'll get is a list of all his properties. And then you'll get a list of his cipher-signed letters to the Queen. He had a code name that he used to sign his letters to her, which I think says something about, just how close and trusting their relationship must have been. Then you will get selected biographies of Hatton's contemporaries, and you will end with a bibliography, a subject index, and a Hatton Holdenby genealogy chart. So you can see what I mean. This book is aimed at enthusiasts. If you're into the Tudor period, then this is definitely a book for you. So in question 4, I always ask, why did I choose to read this book? There are books I choose, and then there are books that get chosen for me. I don't know, you might not have this experience, but when you meet other readers and they find out that you're a reader, you always end up exchanging books, don't you? And it's like a token of recognition, isn't it? It's like, yeah, I get you. I know where you are. So I came to work one day to find this book waiting for me on my desk, and it's a really great feeling when one of your colleagues recognizes you as a reader, and they know that that's going to give you great pleasure to walk in and to see that they're waiting for you. Question 5 is, how did I get this book and how much did it cost? Well, of course, someone let me borrow it, which is brilliant. And I'm very particular when I borrow a book. I have a lot of rules about how I read it. These are my rules for what I do when I borrow books. Rule 1, I may not read the book while I am eating. No, I don't want funny little smudges. Do you know what I mean? I may not read the book in the bath. Okay, that rule is because there was one time years ago when I did that, and you know what happened. The book went in the bath, didn't it? Yep. Completely submerged. It looked like some kind of strange sea creature, some sort of weird flower when it was done and dried out. So I just had to buy a brand new copy. Rule 3, I may not open the pages fully. Like, I don't break the book, right open to lay it flat, because I don't want to leave wrinkles in the spine. Rule 4, I must use a nice bookmark. Now, I don't know if I'll be able to show you the bookmark on camera. I've done this in my Middlemarch meditations. I grab my video camera, which normally doesn't fill very much the screen, and I decide to go big. So let me just reach over here to my lovely copy of the borrowed copy of the book. I don't have my copy yet. And let's see if I can properly hold up something to the camera. It's going to glitter a little bit, but our local library gave out leather bookmarks on the occasion of the coronation. So I just thought, that looks so smart. What else should go in a book about Christopher Hatton except a leather gold embossed bookmark commemorating the coronation of King Charles III? Oh, anyway, never mind. That's another subject for another story. Allow me to reposition this camera now, because I don't normally spend a lot of time on camera or take up a lot of space. There we go. That should do us. Now, in question 6, we always ask, have I encountered anything unexpected or interesting in the book? Well, I think the first thing that really struck me was just how much Hatton spent and how much debt he built up during his life. I'm going to read from page 72 in the book here. His financial affairs at this time were desperate, and he wrote to Burleigh bemoaning his poor state, as he was £10,000 in debt. That's a horrendous amount of debt. He hoped that the Queen would soon grant him her promised annuity of £400, yet dared not press her for it. But then, of course, if you turn forward to page 92, it does say, even his annuity of £400 per annum from the Queen, so he obviously got it, and his percentage of monies collected as the receiver of tenth and first fruit could hardly stem the steady outflow of cash which his ambition now demanded. And Hatton died rather early. He was only in his 50s. The Queen ended up having to settle his debts, and I was not able to find the figure again, but I know it was also over £10,000, so it's just a huge amount of debt that she had to deal with. And then on pages 113 and 14, I won't read those, but you can see the number of literary works that were dedicated to him, because of course Tudor enthusiasts will know this, but if you wanted to make your living writing poetry, plays, whatever, you needed a patron. There was no publishing industry as we understand it. So you needed to find a rich person. You needed to send them a copy of whatever it was you'd written with a foreword and maybe an introductory letter and some other things that were very flattering to that person. And then you had to hope, because they could just accept your gift with thanks and not give you anything. But, the honorable thing was to give the writer some kind of payment, allowance as a reciprocation. But also the other interesting thing was just how close Hatton was to the Queen. I don't think I'd ever been aware of that before. I'm going to read from page 140. It says, Parliament reassembled in early February 1585, with threats to the Queen's safety looming ever larger. The House was immediately faced with the enormity of the plot by Dr. William Parry to assassinate her. Shockingly, Parry was a fellow member, and Hatton had the task of outlining to the Commons the details of the conspiracy. Reaction was immediate, and Hatton and Knollys were asked to take to the Queen the strongly worded request that a suitable form of punishment be devised. The next day, Hatton brought the Queen's answer, that she wanted the due course of law to operate in Parry's trial. One member burst out a fervent comment that the Queen was such a precious jewel, and that he trembled with fear at the thought of her loss. Hatton warmly thanked him for his sentiments, assuring him and the House that Her Majesty, quote, takes it in most gracious and kind part your great care of her, that you esteem her to be such a jewel. She says herself, though I may not, nor will say it, that your care is far above her worthiness. The House murmured its approval as if the Queen herself were present and speaking. Such was Hatton's standing. And he did speak for her. And the more I read those incidents, I felt this was a really smart move on Elizabeth's part. She could never in her lifetime lose sight of the fact that she was a woman in a world where a woman could not play the role of a sovereign. Anything that would enhance her credibility, her authority, was a pragmatic move. So giving herself, effectively, by having Hatton speak for her, she gave herself a masculine appearance and a masculine voice. I often wondered, was Shakespeare's penchant for creating female characters who disguise themselves as men, was that making any kind of comment on English political reality? On Hatton? I don't know. I'm just throwing that out there. The Queen was basically presenting herself by using Hatton as if she were a king. Question 7 is there anything readers should be prepared for if they decide to go ahead and read this book? Well, regarding the writing, there is kind of a substance over style prerogative. I'm putting that nicely. Malcolm Deacon was enthusiastic amateur, but it means he didn't really have a professional editor to go through his book and maybe comment on how to make the style more. It's not highly academic, but it's a little dry. Expect information density. So that's why I say this book is good for enthusiasts. And if you think you would prefer a biographer who's got a more lively sense of story, well, the truth is you'd be hard-pressed to find another biographer right now. Let me show you what exists in terms of biography of Sir Christopher Hatton. We have got this 1946 volume by Eric St. John Brooks. So its age could be an issue. There might be records that Brooks didn't know about, but apparently it is still well researched and very scholarly. Then in 1978, Alice Gilmore Vines wrote Neither Fire Nor Steel. The reviews I've read say this is a little bit sketchy, not as thorough as the 1946 biography, and not as thorough as Malcolm Deacon. The most recent is the University of Manchester Press. This is Religion and Politics in Elizabethan England, The Life of Sir Christopher Hatton by Neil Younger. Sounds like it's a great book. Sounds like it's fantastically researched, but I can't comment on the writing. This is unbelievably expensive. It is published, of course, for the academic market only. So this will cost you, as a Kindle version, £55 sterling or $70 US, and second-hand hardback start at £61 or $78 US. So Malcolm's book, by comparison, is relatively cheap. I think it's £7.99 for a paperback copy from Amazon. So, it's probably your better bet if you'd just like to know about this historical figure. Question 8. Now that is kind of my wrap up. Do I have anything else I really want to say about this book before I close? Well, this isn't going to be any news to somebody who's already really into the Tudor period, but until I read this book, I didn't realize the extent to which pre-Spanish Armada, the English and Spanish naval fleets were effectively acting as pirates to seize plunder from each other's ships. I'm going to read a quote from page 106. It says English seamen refused to be confined to the coastal waters and narrow seas of continental Europe. And then it goes on to say, in 1568, a Spanish fleet, pretending to be on friendly terms, treacherously attacked English ships in the Gulf of Mexico. Now, those ships narrowly escaped and got back to England. But, so it says that thus, while Elizabeth spoke the language of international peace, there was an undeclared war with the Spanish. They were considered as fair game for plunder. Okay, so question 9, my final question is, do I have any ideas for related or follow-up reading? Well, if you're in the UK or you can travel to the UK at any time, I suggest follow-up tourism. Sir Christopher Hatton's two homes, Holdenby House and Kirby Hall, they are both tourist attractions. They did suffer some neglect and demolition, particularly during the Civil War, because they had been places for a certain king to hide. The contents of Holdenby House were supposed to have been sold to raise money to pay the wages of the new model army, but I understand that something mysterious happened to them and they were never turned into that cash. So who knows? The stone walls were also stripped and they were taken to build other houses. But there has been a restoration of Holdenby House in the 20th century and it's still a very impressive property. Now, there is one book I want to recommend because reading Malcolm Deacon made me think again of just how Queen Elizabeth I had never really felt secure in her position as the sovereign of England. And there is another book which sheds light on this, and that is 1599 by James Shapiro. A Year in the Life of William Shakespeare, of course, is what it's saying, but it was an eventful year for Shakespeare, but it was also an eventful year for Queen Elizabeth I. And usually a history book will cover several years, won't it? But what I like is that Shapiro, because he's sticking to 1 year, he can really get down to the fine details. And I found out there were actually 2 Spanish armadas in Elizabeth's lifetime. I'm not going to say any more. I'm just going to whet your appetite if you don't already know. Okay, that is the review done. My already existing subscribers and my new subscribers, I am currently reading Frank Herbert's Dune, and I know those of you who've watched my previous videos must be wondering when she's going to finish that. I'm 70% of the way through, right? So I'm going to do a big reading push this week to try to get it done so I can make a video for you this week. So that's, I'm totally focused on that. That and choosing some new books so I have something else to review. So I'll look forward to talking to you again very soon, everybody. Take care. Thanks for listening. Bye-bye.